This book is really a journey of love and hope and perseverance and how that love gets them through anything and how they never give up hope on each other.
Welcome to our latest episode of Book Reporter Talks To, where our guest today is Sophie Chen Keller, and we are going to be talking about her novel, Little Wonder, which is one of the first books from Jenna Bush Hager's new imprint, Thousand Voices. It's also been selected as, Oprah's book club selection. And for me, it's a Book Reporter Bets On pick. I know I'm not Oprah, but I picked it as a Bets On as well. Our book reviewer, Nora Peel, had this to say about it. Classical music fans especially appreciate seeing Rivers' talent blossom, but even those who don't know the soundtrack will be inspired by the power of the connection between this memorable, determined mother and her devoted son. And there are also brilliant blurbs from some authors that I love, including Jamie Ford, Charmaine Wilkerson, Amanda Peters, and Jean Kwok, most of whom have been guests on this show. And with that, welcome, Sophie. It's so nice to have you here, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with what everybody wants to know. Where were you and what happened when you got the call from Oprah?
So that day, my son, who's 7 years old, was homesick from school. He had the flu, and he had passed the flu on to my 1 year old. And so when the phone rang, I had my son beside me on the rocking chair, and I had my daughter strapped into the baby carrier, and I was on the yoga ball bouncing her to calm her. And then Jenna was speaking, and then Oprah was speaking. And it just blew my mind because in one ear, I had her lovely voice, and in the other ear, I had my two feverish kids. But it was such a special moment because my two kids are the heart of this story. So the fact that I could share this with them, whether or not they had, fevers and sniffles and coughs, it was still really an unforgettable memory.
I love it. And did she just call and say, "Hey, I'm Oprah. I love your book"? Was that it? It was.
Yeah, Jenna was talking about how much she loved the book, and then suddenly she was like, "I'm here with Oprah." And then Oprah was right there and she said, "Hi, I'm Oprah. I love the book." And yeah, I think I was speechless. I think my brain just stopped working.
Right, right. You're just there like, wait a second. The children. Wait, the children. What do I have to
Yeah.
ask about?
And
What's
my
going on
son
here?
and my son next to me, he saw my face. He was like, "What's happening? Who's Oprah? What's going on?" And I was like,
Oprah's on the phone. She's on
exactly.
But you did such a terrific segment with her. I take it you came to New York and you did the segment with that audience. And it was really, really great because it was nice to see what the people pulled away from the book, besides just you and Oprah speaking about it as well.
Exactly. And at that point, so few people had read the book. It was me and my immediate family, my agent, and the team, the publishing team. And so this was really my first real taste of reader reactions. And their questions were just so thoughtful and surprising, like the way people pulled different threads and put them together in ways that I wouldn't have thought of, but were just so lovely. So I really loved interacting with them, and their energy was so great that day.
It was contagious as you sat there, and some of the questions were so well done. I mean, the woman who was speaking at the piece of music, whatever. But I also find that when authors tell me that when they do a book club like this, they learn so much about their book. And they're like, wow, I did not see that connection, or I
Yeah.
did not see this,
Yeah.
what the reader brings to the story. And you had that immediately. Like, there's your first
Yes.
talk. It's with the readers.
I know. I know. Readers are amazing, really.
They really are. Yeah. And what they're going to take away. So, since many people in this audience have not read the book, tell us a little bit about Little Wonder. Just give us like what your elevator pitch is for it.
So, Little Wonder is about motherhood, it's about music, and most of all, it's about the love between a mother and her child.
Mhm.
And it starts with a mother's song and her 11-year-old son, River, who's a piano prodigy. They're arriving in Beijing on the busiest travel day of the year, and they get separated in this massive crowd, and they can't find each other again. And so we follow them over years as they search for each other. And at the same time, they have to make new and very different lives for themselves. So this is sort of every parent's worst nightmare, but this book is really a journey of love and hope and perseverance and how that love gets them through anything and how they never give up hope on each other.
They never give up hope for each other, and he never gives up playing for her, and she
Mm,
never gives up pining for him. So the two
exactly.
things are going back and forth with each other. So let's talk about Song and River's early days because they're living in a tiny town. They're, you tell us, what she's doing and what he's doing at the same time.
So, Song was born in a rural area of northeastern China, and she is a migrant worker. Her and her husband are migrant workers, which means that they go anywhere in search of temporary jobs, and they live in these big cities that need construction workers, that need cleaners, people to do all the work of building the city. And then when that's done, they go back to their home villages, and then they stay for a bit and then they go out again in search of more work. And so oftentimes these families are separated. They live husband and wife in separate areas. Child is often raised by the grandparents in the old village. And so Song returns to her old village to give birth to River. And right before she has to leave him, she has to go out in search of work and a way to earn money. And she's supposed to leave him to be raised by her parents, the grandparents. So this is sort of the thing that is done by
Mhm.
everyone in the village. But she finds that she can't do it. And so she kind of breaks out of the mold and just sort of follows her heart. And she takes her son with her to the big city to find work. And that's where their journey begins.
Their journey begins, and it's you're not exacting the enormity of the size of China. You're not
Mhm.
the enormity of what this train station looks like, and
Mhm.
exactly what she's going through emotionally. I mean, she's married, but she loses her husband. And when that happens, she gets a chunk of money or a settlement, and they're very brisk on the phone. Your husband
Mhm.
died, you will be getting the settlement from the company. I mean, not, we are so sorry doesn't come up too much. It's like passed
Mhm.
along, and that's it. And she uses that and part of that money to buy a piano because she realizes that the son has talent right from the beginning musically.
Yes. Yes, she discovers her. So at the time, she's working as a cleaning woman, and in one of her clients' homes, they have a piano. And one day, she's cleaning in the kitchen, and her son is just sort of playing around in that area, and she suddenly hears "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." She hears a piece of music, and she goes out and she realizes her 4-year-old son, who has never been taught music, is sitting at the piano picking out this melody. And she soon realizes he's got a really special gift and finds a teacher who also recognizes that.
Right. And she's constantly sharing his love of music with him. She's not pushing him. If anything, the impetus to be doing this is coming from the child, that he wants to sit down and play. He doesn't go out and play with children. He goes and he works on his music. He has a teacher who's teaching him. He's working with that teacher. And he also has something which is called stage fright. And when he goes to perform, he is terrified of going out on the stage. So there's something there too about you can be the best talent in the world, but can you share it? And that's what I saw as I was reading this. And there's so many people that are talented but scared, talented but hold back.
Yeah, and I think especially in the arts, whether you're performing music or you're an author writing, you put so much of yourself into this work of art, and so much of making art is also sharing it with others.
Mhm.
So there's a line in the book where later on River's mentor says, a musician or a pianist doesn't have to compete, but they need to perform. They need to share their art because there's something that happens when a reader, as we're talking about reader reactions and how they can take this book and make it something we never even thought about. It's something happens. There's like a chemistry there when a listener hears a piece of music you're playing, or when a reader picks up a book you're reading, something magical is formed.
Yeah.
That's like this beautiful surprise. So it's part of the art creation process.
Yeah, it's part of what happens. So music's so much of the heart of this book. Did you play piano? Did you play any instruments?
I did. So I started learning the piano when I was 7 years old. My mom had signed me up for group lessons at our local library,
Okay.
and I enjoyed those lessons. And so my mom found a private teacher for me, and she bought me a used piano. and I grew up playing the piano. And when I went to college, I stopped playing. Um, and for a long time after that, I just didn't touch the piano again. And in recent years, I've just started getting back into it. And that's because of my children. I had just become a mom, and I was reading that classical music is good for babies' brain development. So I started playing my son recordings of all my favorite pieces to play when I still played the piano. And I was listening to so much music during the day that at night I found myself waking with this ache in my hands, almost as if my fingers wanted to stretch and play those pieces again.
Right.
And so once life settled down a little bit, I bought a third-hand Yamaha upright and I dug out some of my old scores and I very slowly started relearning some of my favorite pieces. And that's been such a joy as well, just to see my kids, dancing in the background as I play, or to hear my son humming some of the pieces I play a lot because he's picked it up through, hearing it around the house. And it's just lovely to share music with them.
Oh, that is so nice. That is so nice that the way you came back to it. Yeah, I played piano as a child. It's all I wanted to do was learn to play piano. When I was in kindergarten, there was a girl who was very proficient on the piano. So it looked pretty simple. So I said, I can do that too. And I got up and did bam, 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 bam. I didn't know anything, nothing. And I sat down, and the teacher says, I think you need to get some lessons. And I was like, okay. And I was like, how could she do that so well? Jean Antonelli was so good. How come I couldn't do that? Couldn't figure it out. So I get a little bit older and I still want the piano. I want the piano. So the teacher comes over, and the day of my first piano lesson, I was running outside and broke my arm. So it was
Oh
delayed
no.
weeks of playing the piano. So she comes over and she teaches me, the basics with the metronome and that, 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 that. So that teacher, we progress out of the one that used to say, Carnegie Hall is not big enough when you were good, but I wasn't that good. So then I found another teacher, and she was young. And she sort of kind of grasped that all I want to do is play Bridge Over Troubled Water. And I wanted to play it really well. And everybody else could go do what they wanted, but that's what I was going to do. So I have very little knowledge of classical music, but I could probably sit down and bang out part of Bridge Over Troubled Water to this day. So
That's amazing.
it's so funny. It's so funny, but it's like, yeah, okay, this is what's going to be like. Have they asked for lessons? Has your son, like your daughter's too little, is your son, what does he want to play?
He does, and he is taking lessons, and he loves it at the moment. He will, since we live in Germany, we live in this like apartment building, and there are like quiet hours. The
Okay.
Germans are very protective over their quiet time. And so you can't play too early in the morning. You need to have a midday break. And then in the evening, you got to stop playing at like 7 or 8 or something like that. And so we're constantly, because he will wake up at like 6 and run to the piano to play. And we're like, get off the piano, it's quiet time. Or like he'll sit down on a Saturday afternoon and start playing his pieces, Ode to Joy or whatever he's working on. And we have to be like, get away from the piano, it's quiet time.
The piano with no sound. You have little headphones. You have to get him one of those.
Oh, yeah, a digital piano.
Yes.
I know, but yeah, it's a great problem to have because it's so
Yes.
much fun seeing him have so much fun playing the piano.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to see the joy of going over to just sit and practice and play. But you know what the thing is? I think what I did love is you have to go practice a half hour every day. That was the kind of thing that would just make me crazy because I was supposed to practice X. And if I could have gone and just played, it would have been different. But it was, and with that metronome, ding, ding. I mean, I thought I was going to
Yes.
go.
Practicing is very different from playing.
Yes,
Yeah, practicing is like scales, arpeggios, going with the metronome and repeating one or two measures for 10 minutes at a time.
yes.
Playing is fun, but practicing is work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
practicing is a lot of work. It's an awful
Yeah.
lot of work. So remember this Bridget, brilliant photos day, but he gets the stage fright. And let's talk about that and what holds him back. When you've known people with stage fright, what's usually holding them back? Is they don't think they're good enough, or is it just a fear of playing in front of a large audience? Is there anything you've seen across the
Yeah.
board that informs it?
Maybe it's a fear of being seen or
Mhm.
being heard because you are up there alone on that stage and there's no distraction, nothing else to look at. Every eye and every pair of ears is just trained on you, and that's a little bit scary.
Mhm.
Um, And for his stage fright, I mean, I just had to draw on my own experience as a pianist. I would get a lot of nerves before performing, not to the extent River did, but I know what it feels like to have to play with super sweaty hands that are slippering across the keys, or just to have your whole body shaking as you're trying to play something forte or something very solid. It's really hard and you really have no control over it. And so I drew on these memories of me playing at competitions or during recitals. And yeah, it's just a matter of you practice so much that you can still play the piece even when you are shaking and sweating and so nervous.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I can still do this. I know it's
Yeah,
muscle memory enough. I can sit down and do this. Just don't want to
exactly.
look at the crowd. I mean, not look at anybody that's out there, you know?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
then there's this moment we really need him to play in a competition. I'm trying not to give away anything from the book. We need him
Hmm.
to play. And I feel like that if this book has a soundtrack, that's where the music gets louder. Like where
Yeah.
we're playing a soundtrack and all of a sudden the music is going to burst. It's going to burst off the page because this is the moment where he needs to connect and things need to connect and he needs to be in that moment. Am I right about what this competition, he's seeing it in a different light at this moment?
You are totally right. And I think in that moment, he draws deep within himself. And I talked before about how maybe stage fright comes from this fear of really being seen. And in that moment, he wants to be seen for the first time. He has a story he wants to tell through his music.
Mm-hmm.
He wants people to know this story.
Hmm.
And so he is really clinging on to that love and that story he wants to share with everyone, that he wants everyone to know about. And so I think that was like the shift for him.
That's the shift. And I also feel like it's like he wants everybody to hear. He wants
Yeah.
somebody out there to be hearing him. And he knows that this is being projected beyond this theater. This is being
Hmm.
played all over town. So
Right.
if there's any hope for him of finding the mother he's lost, there will maybe because he's
Hmm.
playing. And all of a sudden, it's not playing in a room. It's not playing just for a competition. It's playing for a wider audience. And I felt like when he sat down there, I felt the confidence in him that he may have lacked before.
Exactly. Yeah. A wider audience and also the one person maybe to him that matters the most, somewhere out there listening.
Somebody out there, somewhere out there. And I feel like the years that he had a bunch of years when he went without music. He did, I don't want to play. I don't want to do,
Hmm.
I want to be a kid. I want to have,
Hmm.
I want to do what all the other kids do. And I think that also too many times it's no stick with it instead of go take that time and let's see where you come back to. Let's see what you come back and do. And I just felt that was a special moment within the book as well of him
Hmm.
saying, I can't do this right now.
Yeah, it's part of the journey. You leave parts of yourself behind or you take a detour. And in the book, Phyllis, his mentor, says you can't ever truly run away from important parts of yourself. They just kind of get buried or fall to the wayside a little bit for a period of time. But eventually they kind of surface in different ways, surprising ways. And I feel like I've discovered that too in my own life as I get older and become a mom, like things I've left behind in childhood, like the piano and also writing for a period of time, they all had a way of coming back to me
Yeah, they
when the
filter
time was
through.
right.
When
When the
the
time was right. Yeah.
when the time is right. And too often we sit there and say, you need to continue this, but it's not the right moment. And they may come back to it. With something like sports, if they give it up, it's very hard to come back. But with
Yeah.
something, there are things that you can walk away from and come back quite easily. And I
Hmm.
think there's often this, there's push to go do this, that, the other thing. And this book, I think, defines stepping away will be such a brilliant thing sometimes. And it'll make you
Yeah.
more, make you want to.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you quote a number of musical pieces throughout the book, and I think you said that Jenna's imprint, they have a soundtrack, or they have a soundtrack someplace of all these on Spotify. And I think if you add the pieces to your website, it'd be really interesting to hear the pieces that I am not familiar with. I know that there are a lot of people who know exactly what this is, not me. And I think that it'd be interesting for book groups when they're discussing it to be able to play some of the tracks and hear, because usually there's somebody who understands classical music and everybody else is stuck somewhere on the Rolling Stones or whatever. I mean, whatever the group of the day is, it's whatever. And I think that it's interesting because the music and the soaring of the music and the crescendos of the music, I think plays so much into the book. The piece
Yeah,
that you wrote, wrote about.
yeah. I totally agree. I feel like the music would just add to the experience because the music is sort of like a supporting character throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's how can we weave Spotify into the into the audio book?
Yeah.
They're doing
Yeah.
little
Huh.
things. Yeah. There's probably all these licenses involved and everybody will lose it. You were born in China. You grew up in the United States. You went back to China. So tell us a little bit about your journey, and you're in Germany now, because it's a pretty interesting track of what you did.
Yeah, so I was born in rural northeastern China in a village a lot like Song's village. And my family, I come from a family of just very ordinary, hardworking people. My grandparents were farmers and fishermen. My aunts and uncles were food cart vendors. They were taxi drivers. And my mom and dad were the first ones in their families to go to college.
Mhm.
And then eventually they came to the US to go to graduate school. They both studied math. And we lived in Ohio at the time. And then we moved to California. And I met my husband in New York and we lived there for a few years. And then for his work, we moved to Beijing, China. And it was so interesting coming back to China as an adult. It was sort of like a full circle moment because when I was a baby, I had lived with my mom in Beijing. She was working there, and we also lived in sort of a shared dorm room. My mom had support from my grandfather and my uncles to help with me as she was working, but we lived in that sort of similar environment. And then, she worked so hard to get out of there and to come to the US and give us all these opportunities. And then it's interesting that I sort of ended up going back there,
Yeah.
or my husband did, for more opportunities.
Right.
And I was raising my own young child there as a mom. So I felt like I really connected with her in a new and special way.
In a special way, and it's interesting because the jobs are whatever the jobs are. Nobody sits there and says, well, yes, you always want a better job, but you have a job and you have a job
Mhm.
and there's something that's putting food on the table and you go out and you do that every day. And when Song ends up in this, in Beijing, she doesn't have skills. She doesn't have like, she's cleaned homes. And now she's going to become this delivery person and she's going to go out and she's going to ride this bike and she's going to live in a communal spot where you get to know the people in that spot. And every door she's knocking on, she's looking for her son and she's looking for, do you know this boy? So you figure the size of Beijing, and that's what she's looking for as she goes. And it's before she gets her delivered on the, whatever food she's bringing. So let's talk about that. It's like, did you see him? Did you know him?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on this before too. China and Beijing, there are just so many people. China's population is 4 times the size of the US population. There are 20 million people, over 20 million people living in Beijing.
Hmm.
And there is quite a big gap in lifestyles between the haves and the have-nots. It's
Hmm.
very unequal. And so we see that River ends up living a very different life from Song's life as a food delivery worker, such that these two parallel worlds, they really never touch. There's a scene in the book where River is realizing the air he breathes and the water he drinks and the food he eats is not even the same as what his mother would be breathing, right? He's breathing purified air, he's eating imported, safer foods, he's drinking purified or imported water.
Right.
And that's kind of a sobering realization. It's like in this huge city across this huge gap income disparity, and they have to somehow find each other.
Right. And you're talking about the air there, which we've heard about, but I felt like I smelled it when I was reading the page. Like I felt like just the way you feel when you're doing something like that. You're inhaling. Should you wear a face mask? Is that really going to matter? What is going to happen? What's going to do? And I just found that that was something that I've heard about, but I wasn't really thinking about. And the fact that he has asthma, the fact that she is as soon as they split, the first thing she finds on the ground is his inhaler. And she realizes my child is in danger from day one. And then you live with that memory when you're delivering of today's a bad day, he doesn't have his inhaler.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted the pollution to sort of feel like its own character, like it's always sort of lurking in the background and it has different personalities and different moods. Some days it's, playful and light, and other days it's kind of cold and cruel. But regardless, it's always just lurking in the background.
Yeah. It's back there, and it's a character because it's causing such destruction for certain people's lives at the same time, because it's
Mhm.
an unsafe day to go out, but you're going anyway. And they
Mhm.
talk about it in the morning before they go out and leave. Oh, today's going to be a bad day, and
Yeah.
it continues.
Yeah, and as a mom to a young child in Beijing, I think I was particularly sensitive to it because when they're so young, they're really susceptible to these heavy air pollution days.
Right.
So I would really check the air quality levels every day as if I were checking the weather. And there would be strings of days where we would just stay inside a
Right.
week at a time where we did not leave our apartment. And I mean, honestly, it's an incredible luxury that I was able to do that because in the book, we see that Song is not able to do that, right? She has to work and her son has to come with her. And at home, they cannot afford a heavy duty air purifier.
Yeah. And so he's got clean air all day, but then goes home and getting there is a totally different thing.
Mhm.
Also, you talk about how tech is so much more advanced in China at that time. I mean, we're not talking, super present day. And the smartphone was so far ahead of ours. Like everything is
Mhm.
happening on the smartphone. And I feel like we're moving in that direction, but currency is still something that we see here in the States. And you
Mhm.
don't see that as much. It's always a QR code, or it's a this code or a that code, and you're done paying.
Yeah, China's development is so interesting because they go through these like leaps.
Right.
So something that China just leaped over was like credit cards. I think
Mhm.
in the US, that's probably the most common form of payment.
Mhm.
There is still cash hanging around, but of course, everyone's carrying around a wallet with credit cards.
Right.
Um, but no one's doing that in China. They went straight from cash to mobile payments.
Hmm.
And so when you leave the house in the morning in a city like Beijing, you literally only have a phone in your pocket. You
Hmm.
don't need a wallet because you don't need credit cards, you don't need cash, you just need the QR code on your phone. And whether you're going to, really high-end luxury store or you're going to a street vendor barbecuing some meat skewers or you're going to a government building, wherever, everyone takes payment via
Wow.
QR code, scanning a QR code.
Yeah. And it's something that it's kind of alien still here. I mean, yes, people Zelle and whatever. You do some of that, but you're still not the primary.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
not to that extent. Not to that extent. It is like a truly cashless society.
Yeah.
And once you are set up for that, it is incredibly convenient.
Yeah.
There's a
Just
scene
do
in the
everything.
book.
Just make sure the money's in the bank. There, done,
Yeah,
finished.
exactly, exactly.
You brought also in the early days of COVID and what that means when it's in Wuhan and when it's moving closer and whatever. And we all remember those early days. And we also remember the word coming out of China was slow. And at one point, I know they were tracking people's cell phones because they were trying to see, let's say there were 2 billion cell phones, and now there's not that many. Had those people died? And then I'm sitting there like, was it a work phone that was different from a regular phone? But it was such an interesting way of trying to figure out what was really happening in a place where the news was kind of closed of what was going on.
Yeah, and this is something I wanted to write about because we actually moved to Beijing in the fall of 2019,
Ooh.
and we had literally just moved into our new apartment when the first news started coming in from Wuhan of this new virus. So we were there. I was there in Beijing during COVID, and it's an interesting perspective because China was eventually sealed off
Right,
basically from
right,
the rest of the world.
right,
If you wanted, there were hardly any flights going in or out. And if you did fly in, you were bussed straight from the airport to a central quarantine facility where you would stay for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And your movements were tracked via your phone. And China pursued a very strict zero COVID policy.
right.
We see that in the book where if you are if your phone is tracked anywhere near like a confirmed case, someone will reach out to you, you'll be quarantined. And they really stamped out any COVID that was out on the streets. And so it's interesting because for everyone else, it was a very normal life.
Right.
Because so while the virus kind of spread throughout the rest of the world, life in China felt very normal. Daycares were open, everything was open because of this zero COVID policy. So life for a while just kept going on. And then, of course, at a certain point, it did start um, sort of imploding as new strains and more contagious strains came
Right.
out, and it became more and more impossible to follow the zero COVID policy. So that did come to an end. But in those sort of early days when China was getting its really getting its arms around this virus and figuring out how to manage it and tame it, they were successful.
Mhm.
Life was really, it felt really safe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really safe. Well, here, when my son and I ended up catching it the second week in March, right after we closed the company, like literally we closed the company on a Thursday, and on Saturday, my son and I were sick. And I said, I can't even believe this. But it was good because we had the most, like, I mean, I wasn't deathly ill or anything, but we were sick, but then it was over.
Yeah.
And my son then
Yeah.
proceeded to travel over the country because had had it. Like, I'm not going to worry about this anymore. But it's a very
Mm-hmm.
interesting time because everybody went home. Like, I made the decision one day and I said, we're just not going to be in the office anymore. Like, just take
Yeah.
your laptop and go home. And one of my friends was very funny. She says, I took it home. I thought I was going home for like 2 weeks. So I left all my shoes under my desk because she had all her dress shoes at the office. And she goes, now I have no shoes and I want to get back in the building just to get my
Yeah.
shoes. Because she said, I thought we were going to go home, clean the office for 2 weeks and we'd be back. Like no one really understood. And in the book, you've got that a building gets shuts down just because one person is sick. Now no one can leave. No one
Mm-hmm.
can. And what it's doing to ramp this story up because
Mm-hmm.
there are moments where I need to be out there, I need to be working, I need to do this, and no, you have to be here. It's very, very well done because I feel like if I was watching a piano piece, the piece is going like this at that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that
Yeah.
analogy.
It's very, very frenzied, very, very frenzied. So, okay, so let's put it this, the song and river are such wonderful names, but you feel like song should be the little boy who's playing and river could be his mother. So let's talk about the origins of their names, how you came up with those and what they mean.
I mean, Song and River's names just kind of came to me. I mean, throughout the book, I want names that work in Mandarin or English. And
Hmm.
in English, I want the names to have some kind of emotional heft to them. Um, and then for all the other characters' names, it's really names I came across in my time in China.
Hmm.
Um, Especially, at my son's daycare, just the most wonderful array of kids' nicknames. They were so cute, pomegranate, black bean, but I would just write them down. Or drawing on names of my family or family friends. But yeah, I think the most important thing for me was that the name could have some kind of emotional weight once it was translated to English.
Yeah, and it does. It absolutely does. Yep. This book then is separated into three movements. Movement one, two, three. At what point did you visualize that? Did you see that from the beginning, or did that come closer during the editing process of this is doing three different things?
That came towards the end because one of the biggest things I wrestled with throughout the writing process was the structure of this book. So the early drafts looked very different from this final version. Um, Song's life is, it's heavy and it can start feeling quite difficult. But at first, in the early drafts, it was mostly her perspective and there was very little River. And with each iteration, River's role grew because, as a child, he introduces this sort of sense of wonder, this feeling of lightness, I think is what his perspective brings, especially with his synesthesia and how the world is sort of literally magical for him with all these colors and textures. So his point of view grew, and I was trying to figure out how to put all these different pieces together in a way that was propulsive and balanced. And I really rewrote the entire novel at least 3 or 4 times, completely tearing it down and building it up again. And one day I was facing yet another total rewrite when I had this sudden mental image of a braid. And at first, I didn't know what it meant. And then I realized there are 3 strands to the story. There's song story in the present. So I was like, let's call that A. There's song story in the past. I'll call that B. And there's river story, and I'll call that C. And I just started braiding them A, B, C, B, A, B, C, B. And the crazy thing is that almost all the pieces, when I started braiding them, they fell into place. And I knew that was how to tell the story. And so once I had the structure figured out, then I started to see, okay, it's divided into 3 parts. And I don't know, I really want to call them movements, because so much of this book is about music. And I want it to be sort of, and it reflected, first movement in a piece of music. The second movement is a little bit slower, more melancholy. And the third movement is kind of this grand finale. And so I felt like each of those parts echoed what their musical counterpoint was.
And it has this beautiful crescendo at the end. It's just got this beautiful moment where everything, and it's very short. When I went back to look at it, it's not that long. It feels longer when you're reading it than it actually is. But it's got such an emotional impact. And I'm not giving anything away, but it's like as soon as you saw that, you saw there was emotion, there was just the closure that everyone needed in a lot of ways. It was the closure.
Yes, exactly. I'm so glad you felt that.
Yeah, it was the closure, and the closure could have happened differently, but it wouldn't have been the same. The closure,
Mhm.
there's just something so special about the way you did it, and it's so powerful. So, what was your writing time like? Okay, you've got the baby, you've got the 7-year-old. Let's say he was 5 when you were writing this, or 4, or younger. What was the time like? Of like, would you write at night, morning? What were you doing?
Well, I am not so great with multitasking or juggling my focus. So, in the first 2 years of my son's life, I didn't do any writing. I was only focused on being a mom. And I just had no room mentally, emotionally, physically to do anything else. But then when he was about 2, he started daycare. And
Okay.
then suddenly I just had hours of time back to myself.
Right.
And I wanted to write, and I wanted to write about what I had just experienced over the past 2 years. I wanted to write about motherhood, and especially about those early days, that postpartum period where, you're still bleeding and your milk is coming in and it's leaking everywhere, kind of that physical reality. And I wanted to write about those precious fleeting moments, those newborn days, but also, the toil of it and how much love and sacrifice go into that. And I just wanted to capture all of it in my writing. So that's what I did. And then from when he was 2 to then we moved to Germany. So the book took 5 years from when I started to when it came out.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the middle, my daughter was born. And then there was actually a little bit of overlap with momming and writing because my first round of edits came in when my daughter was 4 months old.
Wow.
And so I had no choice. I just had to make those changes while she was napping often on my chest.
Right.
Um, but it was actually a great time because in those early days they sleep so much. So I would just peck away on my laptop for an hour or two at a time while she napped. And I think she is starting daycare in a few months, and then I think I can kind of start thinking about what I want to do next and what's capturing my attention.
What gets your attention, what you want to spend a while with. And I think that that's the important thing too, is what story, and I think the story was probably enriched for the amount of time that you were spending with it because you became more invested in being a mom. You saw more of what it was like to have a 5-year-old, not a 2-year-old, and a
Exactly.
5-year-old that would want to play the piano or would want to do anything. You would sit and watch them, and they become different people. They become more of their own people.
They do. It's such a great joy.
It's like, oh yes, go this, go this. Your last book came out a decade ago. It was called The Luster of Lost Things. And in it, a boy is searching for his father. So the subject of longing has come up twice for you.
Hmm.
What's
Hmm.
drawn you to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm just really interested in what people are searching for, the things we lose, both like physical things and like metaphorical things, and how we search for them, and the people we meet along the way, and kind of the journey we take, and how it always ends up okay in the end. It might not be what you expected, but you will find those people and form those connections, and the journey will make you stronger. Something about that just captivates me. Yeah.
And I'm thinking about your own journey, living in a small village in China, moving to a bigger city, moving to the United States, moving back to China, living in Beijing, and now moving to Germany. There's this nomadic part of your life as well. Your nomadic part of physically moving, besides growing emotionally and mentally and physically with your family or whatever. There's this thing of you've adapted in each of these places, any which could have thrown somebody child coming to a small village in China and moving to the United States. That's a pretty big quantum leap
Mhm.
at the time you made it. And
Mhm.
then going back and then all the different things. Do you think that enriched you as a writer just because you were constantly in a position of forming new friendships, forming new relationships?
Mhm. I do think so. That's a really good question. I do think so. And I find that I'm inspired by each of these places I've lived in. When
Hmm.
I was living in New York, I was in my 20s. I had just met my husband. And so the city just took on this sort of rosy, magical glow. And that was around the time when I started writing The Lesser of Lost Things. And it's set in New York City.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to capture the magic of that city and how you can sort of wander these neighborhoods and just stumble across these hidden gems.
Yes.
Um, and then we moved to Beijing, and life there was so fascinating. It was such an adventure, and so many things were intriguing. The technology, the just everything, the culture, the traditions, the food. And I felt inspired by that, and I wanted to set my next story there. So I feel like I get inspiration from each of these places that I've lived. And I also find that the more you see, the more you see of the world and the more different kinds of people you meet, the more you start to focus on what you have in common.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
you notice all these things that are different, but then you can really see as you move to each place, you can see the kindness with which people treat you or how they welcome you into these new communities and the new friends you make, and how that really makes an impact, at least on our lives. And you see, the love that mothers on any continent have for their kids, or, you just see these really basic fundamentals of humanity, and you realize that it's the same no matter where you go.
Yeah, no matter where you are, no matter what you do, you're going to find your people. I went to school in New York. I went to school up Fordham up in the Bronx in the 70s,
Mhm.
where the Bronx was like really terrifying. But I used to get on the train and go down, and I used to get bored with being on campus, believe it or not. And I just say, I'm just going to take the subway and I get off at 59th Street, and maybe I'll walk down to 4th Street, and maybe I'll get lunch here, and maybe I'll go
Yeah.
see a film over here, or maybe I'll do this, or maybe that. And became so acquainted with the city that it was sort of like home. It didn't feel like it was this place that was so different. And you go to a museum, you'll go do this, take a course in a museum. And I find that if you've done that, if you've gone to school in a big city like that, or you've lived in a big city, everything else become kind of easy because you've
Yeah.
been to a place there were so many different kinds of people and there were so many different neighborhoods you'd wander in and out of that when you go back to China, it's more of the same in a lot of ways. They're different classes,
Mhm.
but it's more of same value structure, same this, same that. And then you go to different places and you pick up different things if you're aware of what's going
Hmm.
on. Mhm.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, some people just don't like get this. So was the title always a little wonder? Was it always this is
It wasn't actually. The title was different. The early drafts were called A Prodigy in Beijing.
oh wow.
Yeah. And the title Little Wonder came after the manuscript was written, and I was brainstorming ideas. And this phrase was something I had jotted down. I was just jotting down lots of different phrases. And this phrase stuck with me because it captures the way we feel when we're looking at our babies, our little wonders. And for song, River is her little wonder,
Yes.
but he's also a little wonder
Yeah.
because he's a piano prodigy.
Yes.
And so much of this book also hinges on injustice and inequality. Sort of like, it's little wonder this thing happened to this person.
Mhm.
And I just felt like the title really captured that as well.
Yeah, I feel like that all completely works. And he is a little wonder to so many people. People are just sitting there looking, and is it a little wonder if they're going to find their way back to each other? Because it would be wonderful if they found their way back to each other at the same time. And there's a point during the end where there's a line. It was a wonder what had happened to her. It was little wonder that her son was lost. And it's just this great line of, and sometimes you read that line towards the end and you're like, oh, I bet that was always where we're writing towards. And sometimes you don't even know
Yeah,
you're writing towards it.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So was this the first cover that you saw?
We saw a bunch of covers. So there was so the artist is a Japanese stencil painting artist, and we had looked at samples of her work, and it was really so beautiful. So we thought, well, let's have her make a cover, and she gave us, half a dozen different concepts. And this one stood out because, the scene with the mother and the son dancing, it's
Mhm.
so pivotal to the book, and it is echoed. You see these ripples of it throughout the book. And I really love how the power lines are sort of transformed by music.
Yes. And there's actually what music is that? If you play these notes, what is it?
Yes, it's actually the opening melody to Tchaikovsky's first piano concerto, which has a really important role in Song and River's journey.
I think it's really interesting when you said that about the notes, I immediately went and like these are the little details on a book cover that you might miss.
Yes.
And everything else is very pale and the mother and child are bright. And I like that as well because that was, a pullout. So the audiobook of Little Wonder is narrated by Emily Wu Zeller. Now, what about her narration works for you? I listened to a little bit of it and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved the sound of her voice.
Yeah.
It was so lovely, and the way she could capture different emotions and the way she could voice song and capture song so perfectly, but also then in the next chapter, voice River and catch sort of River's innocence and his wonder at the world. Like I just loved how she could move between that and all the different voices for all the characters.
Yeah, it sounds like it's multicast in a lot of ways, but it's just one woman. She just does
Yeah,
a good
it's
job.
incredible. Yeah.
Has there been film interest in this?
You'd have to ask my agent. I
Oh,
don't know.
okay. All right. All right. Okay. I know it's not an easy book to film, but I think it's so interesting the way the whole story goes. I mean, it's a big story in a lot of ways. It moves to a lot of places, and yet then it doesn't because it's in a couple of different places. You're in the train station, you're in a small village, you're in another small village. I don't know. So, okay, your son is 7. Your daughter's going to be going to daycare, so we are going to see some writing next. We're going to see something new from you.
Hopefully, yeah. Once I get some hours to myself, like I really need that long stretch of time for my
Right.
brain to sort of kick into gear and to start making some connections and just simmering on, life and ideas, and we'll see what happens. I'm never going into it, I never really know. And even starting writing Little Wonder, I only knew I wanted to write about a food delivery worker. I wanted to write about motherhood and music. And I had the sense that the mother and son would be torn apart and the search for each other would drive the story. Um, and that's all I knew, really. And then I just took it a day at a time. So we'll see what happens with this next one.
We hope it doesn't take as long. No more taking a deputy. You can't be going off to college as you're writing that is publicizing the next one. You have to be packing him, so you can't do that. I want to show that after reading this book, my child at home still has that piano in it, and my father's 96. It's somewhere along the way we'll sell this house, and I have not quite told my husband yet, and he doesn't listen to my podcast. I'm okay that I want the piano. And the thing
Yeah.
is, I have always, if we get a piano, I want a grand piano. And my husband goes, I said, well, we could knock out the window in the front and we could put it like up here. Oh, and he's like, we're going to do construction to bring in the piano. But that's the way my brain would work. Like that, and I'd have a piano room upstairs. And he's like, okay, how are we going to get the piano up the stairs? Like something very basic and boring. But I'm sitting there, it's an upright, it's not beautiful, it's not whatever, but it's made me think again of what I created there during that time. I mean,
Mhm.
can I recreate Bridge Over Troubled Water like Larry Knechtel? I mean, can I do that or not? You
Yes.
know what I mean?
I am so I'm so rooting for you to sit down at that childhood piano and give it a go and give it time because it doesn't come rushing back all at once,
Right.
but it
It'll
takes time.
connect.
But once you do, it feels so amazing. I
Yeah.
really am rooting for you to do that.
I'm sitting there going, wait, maybe this wall in the office could have piano and then move the studio over a little bit. And he just looks at me, he goes, do you have any idea of space and how you get things from one floor to the other? And I was like, not really. I married an engineer for a reason. You know,
It'll happen. You'll make it happen. Yeah.
we'll make it happen. You'll figure it out. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed sharing this book with our readers. So looking forward to doing it more and seeing what you do next.
Thank you so much. I had a great time chatting.
And to everybody else, we'll see you next time on Book Reporter Talks To.